Daf Beis Amud Beis, the second line from the top. We learned previously the machlokes. We learned in the Mishnah the machlokes between Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say that the height of the kaira in a mobile, in the alleyway, in the side street, if it's higher than 20 amas, it's possible you have to be mamayed. And Rav Yehuda says you don't have to. So the Chum say the height and the width of the opening of the mobile has to be no larger, no higher or wider than 10 by 20, 10 amas in width and 20 in height. Rav Yehuda says that there's no limitation. We have not learned about a limitation on the height, and it's not clear as of yet what the limitation might be, if any, on the width. So the Gemara suggested that the basis of the machlokes is that we see that what is called a Pesach, this Pesach ol Moed, the hechsher for a mavoi, the opening has to be something which is still defined as a Pesach. It has to be defined as an opening, a Pesach, not a pierce. It's not like the wall is broken. It has to be an entranceway. We see that Pasuk says Pesach ol Moed, and we see that what the Pesach of the Heichal, that's called a Pesach. The dimension of the Heichal was 10 by 20. So therefore, the Chum hold that the Mavli cannot be higher or wider than what we see is called a Pesach. And we were suggesting, till now, the Gemara suggested that, according to Rav, he says that Rabbi Yehuda says that we learn out from the Pesach of the Ulam, because he holds that the Pesach is referring to the Ulam as well. The dimension of the opening of the entranceway to the Ulam was 20 by 40. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda holds that even if it's higher than 20, even to a height of 40, it also should be kosher. So at this point, we were assuming that the basis of the machlokes is, do you learn out from the Pesach of the Heichal or the Pesach of the Ulam? Well, we also see another shar. We see another Pesach, the Pesach shar of the Chalser, the opening, the entranceway into the courtyard of the Mishkan, and that had a different dimension. The length of the Chalser, of the Mishkan was 100. It was 100. And the width was 50 by 50. And the height was 5. Now, it says over there that the height was 5. It says that the width was 50. So the width was 50. And it says there was curtains of 15 amas on one side. And it says on the other side of 15 amas curtain on the other side. So therefore, if you have a tire width of 50 and there's curtains on each side, that means that the opening in between, well, the curtains are 15 and 15, that's 30. If the entire width is 50, that means the opening was 20. That means, therefore, you should say that it should be kosher with a width of 20. So just like the Pesach of the Chotzer had a height of 5 amas and a width of 20, so you should say Avkan Chamesh B'Roich Esrim. You should say the kaira and the mavoi should be kosher if it has a width of 20, but only a height of 5. Mor says no. We do not learn out from the Pesach of the Shara Chotzer, because Pesach Shara Chotzer Yikri Pesach Stama Lo Yikri. That's not called a Pesach. It's called a Pesach of Shara Chotzer. It's specific to the Shara Chotzer, to the courtyard, but it's not called a Pesach. It's called a Pesach Shara Chotzer. Now here we're talking about a Pesach, so we would learn out rather from the Ulam or the Heichal. Alternatively, a different teretz is when it says that the 15 are on each side, it's not the way we assumed it until now, that it's 15 on the width on each side. What's referring to, it's referring to the height. It's telling you that they were 15 amas high, that the curtains were 15 amas high. And it's not discussing the width of the Pesach. How can you tell me it's talking about the height? It says the height is 5 amas. Gemara answers no. That it says that it had a height of 5 doesn't mean from the ground. It doesn't mean that it was 5 in total. It means from the height, from the top of the Mizbeach. Now, so this is going according to the Mandoma that holds, is going to Rabbi Yossi, who holds that the height of the Mizbeach was 10. So according to that sheet, the Mizbeach was 10. It's saying that the curtains extended higher than the height of the Mizbeach, 5 amas higher than that. So the 5 amas that it's referring to is 5 amas above the height of the Mizbeach. In total, it was 15 amas. It was 5 above the Mizbeach. And the Saisis mentions that it's telling you that this was appropriate, that there should be tznius, where the kohen is doing avodah, he would not be exposed to the public. So we're still maintaining, Rav is maintaining that Rav Yehuda learns out from the ulam, and therefore he is maksher the mavoi, even if it's higher than 20. Frank the Gemara, is that so? Rabbi Yehuda Mipischal Ulam Gama, is that so? V'hatanan, we learned in the Mishnah, haracha me'eser amos yemayed. If it's Mishnah says that if it's wider than 10 amos, if it's wider than 10, the opening has to be lessened. You have to thicken the walls so that the opening is less than that. So you can only have a width of 10. But like Rabbi Yehuda, we don't see that Rabbi Yehuda argues on that. Now, if he's learning it out from the ulam had a width of 20, he should be arguing that as well. He does argue. He doesn't mention it in the Mishnah, but he argues in the Brisa. The Sanya Barocha Miyud Amas Yemayed. Hanakama says if the Movi is wider than 10 Amas, Yemayed, you have to decrease the width, and Rabbi Yehuda says you don't have to. So he does argue on it. Frankly, more of a lifting masni. And why doesn't he argue in the Mishnah? Our answer is he argues on the height. Now, if he argues on the height, so therefore, apparently, it's because he's not learning it out from the Pesach of the Heichal. So once we know that on the height he argues, he would argue on the width as well. The Brisa does mention it. As the Ritva explains, the Brisa frequently elaborates more than the Mishnah. But the Mishnah says in concise terms. But once we see that he argues on the height, therefore we would logically assume that he argues on the width as well. But still, the Gemara asks, how can you say that Rabbi Yehuda learns out from the opening, from the Pesach, the entranceway of the Ulam? We learn in the Brisa, if a mavoi is higher than 20, it has to be lower. The Rabbi Yehuda Machshad Mem Vanun Amma, Rabbi Yehuda says even 40, 50 amas is kosher. Vatani Bar Kapara Admei, he says even 100 amas in the height. Bishlama Bar Kapara Guzma. Bishlam, according to Bar Kapara, we can say it's not precise, it's an exaggeration. He said 100 amas. He didn't mean it precise, it's an exaggeration. He just meant to say that it's much more than 20 amas. But perhaps it is limited to 40, and perhaps you could say you learn out from the height of the ulam. However, Rabbi Yehuda, he says 40 or 50 might guzim. There's no exaggeration. So Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda Arbaim Gamar Pischa Shal Ulam. Now 40 we can understand. Well, if you say you learn out from the height of the ulam, it was 40. We can understand. But where does 50 come from? So doesn't that show you that we're not learning out from the Pesach of the ulam, and we're learning out from another source of what the height is? Where it says, really, it's not so. Rav Yehuda does not learn out from the Pesach of the Ulam. And Rav, he made a mistake. And he made a mistake because he interpreted the Brisa, when the Brisa said that the Chachamim learn out from the Heichal, he assumed that Rav Yehuda was learning out from the Ulam. Hamasnisa tisla Rav. The Brisa misled Rav. The Sayim Mavi Shu Gavoya Mechav Hama. It says a Mavi which is higher than 20 other Yoisimi Pischa Shal Heichal, which is higher than the Pesach of the Heichal Yemayit. So it has to be lowered. Husavar. So Rav held Husavar Midrabanim Pischa Shal Heichal Gamre that If the Rabbanan are learning out the dimension, the height from the Pesach of the Heichal, it would be logical to say Rabbi Yehuda Pischa Shululam Gomer, and Rabbi Yehuda must be therefore learning out from the height of the Heichal, which is 40. But Velohi, Rabbi Yehuda Mipischa the Malachim Gomer, but really in truth he's not learning out from the Pesach of the Heichal, and therefore it's not limited to a height of 40. He's learning it out from Pischa of Malachim, the entranceways of palaces. Palaces, it's enormous entranceways, and they were very high, even higher than 40. And so therefore, he was learning out from the castles, the palaces of the Malachim. That's called a Pesach. Similarly, this has a din of a Pesach, even if it has that kind of height, even though it's higher than 20, and perhaps even higher than 40. But according to the Rabbanan, but we are maintaining that the Rabbanan learn out from the Pesach of the Heichal. The Brisa says that clearly. If that's the case, it should require doors just like the Heichal had doors. So we should say that it's not considered to be a Mesukan unless it has doors. But we learn not that way. You don't need doorways to close off the Mavi. We learned that Hechsher Mavi, what's the Hechsher of a Mavi? Beis Shammai Amrim, Lechi V'Kara. Beis Shammai says you need both a Lechi, a vertical post, and a crossbeam that comes across, and you need both. Beis Hillel Amrim, Lechi Oikar. But Beis Hillel says either or. You don't need both or either or. But certainly you don't need doors. Now, if you're learning out from the Heichal, you should require doors. More answer, the also says Heichal Tzniusa Ba'al Mukhdavi. It was not necessary. It was only for tznius. They only needed it for privacy, but not in order. It's not that it would not be considered a Pesach without the door. Well, if that's the case, if you have a tzuras Pesach, it should not help, and we should say that in any event, if the entrance is wider than 10 amas, even if you had a tzuras Pesach, it should not be kosher. Tzuras Pesach is you have like an opening, a doorway. You have two vertical posts, and you have two mezuzahs and a mashka, two verticals, and a lintel, a crossbeam. Now, if you learn out from the Heichal, well, the Heichal had a tzuras Pesach, but nevertheless, it only had a width of 10, and it didn't have a width of more than 10. So, therefore, you should say that by a Mavi, similarly, that even if it has a tzuras Pesach, it should not be kosher more than 10. The Heichal had a tzuras Pesach, and it is only 10 wide, not more. And as Taisus explains, if the Gemara is assuming that the width was 10 and not more than 10, because if it was more than 10, it would not have a din of a Pesach. It would not have a din of a Pesach if it was more than 10. But if you're saying that a tzuras Pesach allows one to define, it can be defined as a Pesach even if it's more than 10, so the Taisus explains that we would have said the Heichal should be the same width as the Ulam, which was 20. Why is it 10? Because it has to have a din of a Pesach. But if you see a tzuras Pesach, you can still enables you to define it as a Pesach, even though it's wider than 10. Well, why wasn't it wider than 10? Alamatzanan, im yesh le tzuras Pesach, al pi shoracham me'asar amos, ein tzorach l'mayit. If the opening to the Mavi has a tzuras Pesach, it can be wider than 10. Well, if you're learning out from the Heichal had a tzuras Pesach, and it was only limited to 10, not more. Our answer is midu time el Rav. That's true. But we're only going according to Rav. And Hamasale Rav Yehuda Lachia Bar Rav Kami de Rav, he taught Einay Tzorach L'mayit, that you don't have to decrease the width if there's a tzuras Pesach. Amalei Asnai Tzorach L'mayit, but Rav himself said you do have to be Mamayit. So you're asking me, Akasha, that if you learn out from the Heichal, tzuras Pesach should allow you to, even with a tzuras Pesach, you should not be allowed with more than 10. And we know with the tzuras Pesach, you are allowed with more than 10. What are you asking, Kasha? The one who says that we learn out from the Heichal is Rav. And Rav said even with the tzuras Pesach, you're still limited to a width of 10 and not more than 10. Tosfos asks a kasha, what does it mean, midu time el Rav? The kasha is only according to Rav. The Brisa says, b'feirush, that the Chachamim are learning out from the Heichal. So what does it mean, midu time el Rav? We see clearly from the Brisa that we learn out from the Heichal. So Tosfos gives two tirutzim. In one teretz he says that the Brisa argues with the Mishnah. That you could say that the Brisa learns out from the Heichal, but in the Mishnah is not. Or alternatively, Tosfos says that it's learning when it says from the Brisa that you're learning out from the Heichal, it's only for a siman. Tosfos in the second teretz answers that perhaps the Brisa is not really saying that we're learning out from the Heichal. Perhaps the Brisa, when it says that we learn from the Heichal, it means it's just a siman. Just as a way of remembering what the dimension is. A siman l'davar is the height of the dimension of the opening of the Pesach of the Heichal. But not that that's the source of the halacha. And therefore, it doesn't have to conform to it exactly. Now, but the Heichal, there was a tzuras of Pesach, and it still had a limiting width of 10. But not that we learn out from the Heichal. It's Rav was saying the actual limud is from the Heichal. So Rav is learning it from the Heichal. Therefore, we would have to say that even if there is a tzuras of Pesach, it cannot have a width of more than 10. But in Chanami, Rav taught that Yitzarech Lamayat, that even with a tzuras of Pesach, you do have to, Mimayit, it cannot be wider than 10.